Hi everyone, it's Katie James here and Jacob Bestwick here from the quota management team. We're just here to give you an update on where uptake is and what the ICE's advice is that's been released recently. So this is a Southwest Area quota presentation. Just to give you a heads up, hopefully you can all see my screen. Just a key thing to remember is that the presentation does have ICE's advice in it. It's provisional advice. We'll have negotiations later on this year, and that will give us a final decision when the Secretary of State or SOS determination is published as to what the actual change will be from this year to next year for each of the quota stocks, and that's usually published in late December. So just to give you a bit of a rundown, these are very much the same as they normally are if you attend RFGs in the past. We've got a graph on the left-hand side which has 3 bars on it, a blue bar, an orange bar, and a grey bar. The blue bar is the initial availability, so that's how much we get allocated in our pot, and this is specifically looking at this slide for the under 10 metre pot for anglers in Area 7. The orange bar, is the total available, so that's whether the amount of stock has gone up or down via whether we've traded any stock in if we need more, or whether we've traded it out, for example. And then the grey bar is the actual amount that's been landed by the vessels themselves, so for the under 10 metre vessels in this particular area. The right-hand graph is a monthly breakdown of what the landings have been so far this year and what they've looked like in previous years. So we've got the tonnage going up, and then we've got the years along the bottom. The very bottom bar in the dark blue moving on to orange is the January to February, and then the top of the bars is up to December, or as we've got here in 2024, we're in the middle of August, so you'll see a bit of brown in there for the August bar. And then on each page, you'll see a little yellow box on the bottom of the page which says ICE's advice change from 2024 to 2025. And for example, this is Angler 7 for a stock change, and we're looking at a minus 1% change for next year is what the ICE's advice team have given us as a provisional change to the stock of Angler 7. This year we've had 1,255 tonnes roughly of the stock, and that's what we've got to date at the moment. So it's gone up a little bit since we had the initial allocation, and current uptake is sitting at 149.2 tonnes. We're then going to move on to Angler 7s, and that's for the over 10 metre fleet. So obviously the ICE advice is the same because it's the same stock, but we've got a current allocation of 309 tonnes and an uptake of 63 tonnes. Neither of those stocks are looking at changing any kind of catch limits at the moment, and they've got fairly generous catch limits. But if you did need more, we're happy to look at those. So feel free to contact myself or Jacob at any point. Moving on to Brill in Area 7 D&E, this was a new stock that we received an allocation for this year, was previously a non-quota species. So the ICE's advice change for this stock has got a plus 21% for this year moving into next year. Under 10s wise, we had an initial allocation of 26 tonnes. We have a current allocation of 46, so we've done a bit of trading in there to ensure that we've got enough to support both the under 10 metre and the over 10 metre fleet, because we've got some maneuverability between the two pools of the unders and overs to make sure we've got enough there to support everyone. But we can see there that even with the catch limit at 0.6 tonnes, which was enough to support everyone based on looking at previous year's uptake on a monthly basis, we've got uptake at 12.35 tonnes for the under 10s and about 4.7 for the over 10s. So if that wasn't enough, or it was a stock that you're looking at that would be more later on this year, by all means get in touch. So COD 7 B to K, excluding D, under 10 metre fleet. The ICE's advice hasn't changed for next year, so it still has a zero catch advice going forward into 2025. And we've still got the bycatch only limitation there to the catch limit, which sits at 0.3 tonnes at the moment. But we started off with 15 tonnes. We've got 15 tonnes this year at the moment, and we've only had an uptake of about 1.6 tonnes. So there's plenty left there in the allowance that we've got at the moment. Similarly, looking in the over 10s, 1.9 tonnes is the current allocation, and the current uptake is 0.47. Still sits at the same catch limit of 0.3 tonnes on the bycatch only. Moving on to haddock in Area 7B to K for the under 10 metre fleet, we have a current allocation of 279.9 tonnes, catch limit 3.5 tonnes, and an uptake of 2.21 tonnes. We do have ICE's advice here of provisionally estimating of a minus roughly around the 40% mark for change into 2025. We do not see particularly high uptake though, so that shouldn't impact if that was to come into play for 2025 in terms of a catch limit effect of uptake. Looking at the over 10s for haddock in area 7B to K, again with the current allocation of around about the 80 tonnes mark, an uptake of 3.63 so far this year. Western hake, I know there were some concerns earlier in the year, and Jacob did a UK level uptake report for that one, which showed that we were at relatively low uptake anyway. Although excuse me, we have seen a few vessels have moved over to some hake earlier this year when pollock wasn't available. It hasn't seen a big increase that's made us worry about our allocation at all. So we still had 125 tonnes at our current allocation at the moment. We have had a little bit traded in from the initial 114 that we had, and we've got a catch limit that's fairly generous at 10 tonnes, but uptake still sits at 26.2 tonnes. You can see there that in the February-March period where people may well have been netting for pollock, there has been a bit of an increase in the amount of hake, but I don't think that's going to affect us in terms of allocation. Looking at next year, we've got a minus 28% cut, but assuming we see something similar to this year, we should be okay. Moving on to herring, 7E and F for the under 10 metre fleet. We've got a current allocation of around about 74.6 tonnes and uptake of around 3.1 tonnes. The ICES advice for this one isn't due till September, October time. Most likely to be October in this case, that we'll get some industry meetings to update us of all the new changes that we should be seeing for ICES advice of various stocks like skates and rays and things that we see at the later part of the year. Western mackerel, again, the ICES advice due for this one isn't until later in the year. We have a current allocation of 385.1 tonnes at the moment. A lot of that stock's been traded out this year, but we still have plenty to be able to support the entire fleet. With uptake at 42 tonnes, and previous year's uptakes looking at somewhere between 75 and 90 tonnes. There's definitely some space there in the pot for everyone to be able to catch. Looking at handline mackerel, we started at 1,781 tonnes. We have done some trading again to be able to support some of the other stocks, and we're currently at 906 tonnes in terms of our current allocation, with uptake again at 73 tonnes. So there's lots in the pot there to support the rest of the year for the fleet. Moving on to place 7E for under 10 metre fleet. Now, previous to this year, this was a combined stock via place 7D and E. That was a stock that was realigned this year, and they separated it into place 7D and place 7E. So on that left-hand graph, 2021, 2022 and 2023 will be a combination of place 7D and E. For 2024, that just takes into consideration what we were allocated and where we sit with the allocation at the moment for 7E. So you'll see that we started at 156 tonnes. We have done a little bit of trading in, and we've got 164.7 tonnes there. And you can see, looking so far this year, we're at 48 tonnes with a catch limit at 1.5 tonnes. So it's uptake's definitely looking a little bit behind the previous sort of 3 years, really. But happy to revisit that if anyone does have any issues over the catch limit for place 7E. ICES advice change for next year is a minus 24% provisional cut at the moment. We will keep an eye on that as to whether we need to trade any in next year to make sure we've got some full support for the fleet. Looking at place 7E for over 10s specifically. So again, this left-hand graph reflects 2021 to 2023 for 7D and E. 2024 graph at 2024 bars are specifically for 7E. And what we'll see again is the uptake is a little bit behind what the last 2 years, but so probably sits a bit better as to what 2021 uptake was like. We've got an allocation of 20.4 tonnes with uptake at 17.69 tonnes. So I appreciate we're relatively close, but what we've traded in has gone into the under 10 metre pool, and we can manoeuvre that about to be able to support both the unders and the overs again. Moving on to place 7 F and G for the under 10 metre fleet. We've got about 21 tonnes in there. We did start with 8.5, so definitely traded some in. You'll see that higher bar in the orange there. We've got a total uptake of 1.8 tonnes, so it's relatively low uptake there in terms of what we've got of allocation. However, there is a cut for next year looking at potentially 72% based on the provisional ICES advice that we've received. So again, it's one stock that we'll keep an eye on as to whether we need to trade in some additional to support the fleet going forward. Moving on to pollock in area 7 for the under 10s, there is a zero catch advice on the provisional ICES advice for next year again. we got an initial availability of 44.6 tonnes this year. We have traded some additional quota in around about the 20 tonnes mark, so we're sitting at about 68 tonnes at the moment. We have already fished 41.38 tonnes, so if we were looking at what we were initially allocated, we have nearly fished everything that we were given. We have obviously been able to trade in some additional to support and hopefully support those later months of this year. As people will know, there was banked quota, and if you have a look on our September catch limit review, you will see some decision making that we made around not using the banked quota and the reasons around why we did that. You will find on the last slide of this presentation that there is a link to the September catch limit review. Alternatively, if you go to the gov.uk website and put in September catch limit review, whether it's open or shut by the point you see it, you will be able to see those lines that we've taken as to what decision we made around not using the banked quota. By all means, if you have any more questions, though, feel free to contact me. More than happy to explain a bit further or in a bit more detail as to the decisions we've made this year in relation to pollock. So the catch limit hasn't changed for pollock this year. It still sits at 0.1 tonne or 100 kilos per month as bycatch only. And we're hoping that that last 20 tonnes will see us through for the remainder of the year. And just to make it clear, we won't receive any banked quota for pollock next year. So it's likely that we will see somewhere around that 40 tonne mark, give or take, depending on what negotiations bring for pollock. So we will need to manage that going forward next year in terms of being able to look at whether we can trade any additional pollock in to support the fleet with the catch limit going forward. And it's something that we will do this year, looking forward to next year, whether we can provisionally sort of pencil any in from any POs to support next year going forward. Moving on to under 10 metre skates and rays in areas 6 and 7, excluding D. ICES advice for this stock again is due later on in the year. We have a current allocation of 557, so we received sort of around 20 tonnes additional in there. We have a current catch limit of 15 tonnes. This is a catch limit, it does fluctuate, depends on seasonalities and vessel requests, where they're seeing a bit of extra skates and rays around. So please do contact us if you need any support in terms of the catch limit. Current uptake is looking at 347.15 tonnes, so definitely got the room there for the catch that we're going to see for the remainder of this year. Looking at the over 10 metres for skates and rays, 6 and 7, excluding D, we've got a current allocation of 132 tonnes and current uptake of 57 tonnes, so short of that 50%. Looking at the graph, so on the right-hand side, there's definitely some fluctuation in terms of what's been caught at various months, especially for January, February. 2024 is relatively reflective of 2022, but was very different last year. So it's just something that we'll keep an eye on for catch limits again, should anyone need any support if they see any additional stock about. Under 10 metre Sol 7E, as you're aware, it's a stock that we never receive the full amount that we need to support the fleet for the year out. So we do trade in quite an additional amount to be able to provide the catch limits and support the fleet going forward. We started this year at 71 tonnes and we are currently sitting at 191.8 tonnes. The last couple of years in terms of uptake has been a little bit lower than we've seen in the past. 2022, you'll see that was sitting at around 180 tonnes. Last year, somewhere around about the 175-ish tonnes. And looking at it as being relatively stable to what's been the last couple of years. So we should have enough to support the fleet there going forward for this year. Uptake is currently sitting at 88.87 tonnes. The ICES advice provisional is a minus 3% cut, so less than the last couple of years that we've had a prediction of around about minus the 20 to 25%. So there's a smaller cut this year compared to previous cuts that they're sort of suggesting, but we'll see what effect that has in negotiations. Over 10 metres, Sol 7E. Again, we start at 18.8 tonnes. We have fished 17.56 tonnes, but as I said, we trade a lot into the under 10 metre pool, and it's likely that 190 tonnes will be in excess to requirements, so we'll be able to manoeuvre a small amount around to be able to support the over 10 metre fleet through the year end then, basically. Under 10 metre Sol 7F and G, ICES advice is provisionally estimating a minus 9% cut, subject to negotiations. We've got current allocation of around about 29 tonnes. Catch limit sits at 2.5 tonnes, and current uptake sits at 8.56 tonnes. We're very much on par with last year up until June and the year before, but we've definitely seen a slow uptake for the July and August months so far. So it may well be that we're a bit behind uptake from the previous years. Under 10 metre, whiting 7 beta K excluding D had a bit of a realignment this year. So everything in beta K excluding D became bycatch only. And we've set that catch limit at 1 tonne. We haven't seen or heard any issues around that bycatch limit, but by all means, feedback to us if you've got any information. The catch limit, the amount of allocation that we received was around about 60 tonnes. We have received a small amount of additional in trades, and so we've got 65 tonnes. The uptake sits at 25.96, but it looks as though we've got enough sort of reflective of supporting the amount that we've seen in previous years, basically. And then because it was a zero stock this year, again, ICE's advice of provisionally release, it's a zero advice again for next year. Undulate Ray for 7 D&E. The 2024 allocation was 1,358 tonnes. The restrictions in the schedule of your licence still remain in place in relation to a minimum and maximum landing sizes and the close period for spawning between May and August, which is obviously due to come to an end shortly at the end of this month. That will be reviewed in the fact that we used to have a 200 kilos, or so far this year we've had a 200 kilos per trip allowance. We are in the catch limit review at the moment, which you will see have recommended that we are looking to move that from a 200 kilos per trip allowance to a 2 tonne per month catch limit, much like we have all the other catch limits. And that would sit within the annex of your licence, whether you're in the non-sector or the sector. That would be applicable to all vessels, because it is a UK unallocated stock. So it's not specific to whether you're in a PO or not in a PO. All vessels would have the same catch limit. We're very much going off the advice of looking at what vessels have caught this year and last year in their per trip amount, but over a month period. And it is something that we can obviously review, much like any other catch limit going forward. So if you do find that 2 tonne per month is an issue, by all means get in touch with myself or Jacob, and we're happy to review that. This is very much a starting point for us so that we can work out what sits best for the fleet. And in terms of the allocation, it's quite a large allocation, so there's definitely some flexibility there. We're just aware we don't want to cause any issues too early on, and so just it's sort of a safe starting point in terms of basing on what people would have previously for uptake. ICE's advice for raise in general isn't due till later this year, so any change to that we won't know until later this year. In terms of uptake, we are sitting at around about 52 tonnes of the 1,358, so there's plenty of scope there. Looking at small-eyed ray for 7 F and G, we have an allocation this year, again a UK allocation, not a specific to the under 10 metre or the non-sector, of 46 tonnes. Our current allocation sits at 51 tonnes, and that's because myself and Jacob did a trade with Belgium and obtained their additional 5 tonnes that they had to top up our pot, which is what we've done for the past sort of 2 or 3 years now, is to trade in a little bit where possible that we could get hold of some to be able to support the fleet, because it has been a cut from in the past where we've seen allocations of sort of 70 tonnes around the 2021-2022 mark. We do have a catch limit at the moment of 0.5 tonnes per month. I have today, the 21st of August, just popped in a variation, so we will see at the end of this week that increasing to 750 kilos per month. At some point this weekend, you'll all receive your text message to notify you of a change to your variation anyway. Uptake sits at 45.79 for last year, and we had relatively low catch limits last year. With our 500 kilo catch at the moment, we are only sitting an uptake this year of 22.08 tonnes, which is why we've decided that there are some of the fleet that will see scope more in this late summer period now of small-eyed rareback. And we know that looking at previous years' uptakes, you see smaller amounts. It tends to be in that November, December, especially for the last couple of years. But it just gives that opportunity for you guys, for us, and we will just keep reviewing the catch limit as to whether we need to alter it again later in the year. It depends on uptake or number of vessels that basically start using the catch limit. So please do keep an eye on your text variations. If you do receive one, please check what the catch limit change has been that's been issued to make sure that you're keeping within your monthly allowance. Moving on to spur dog for the Western area, we've got a UK allocation of 5,089 tonnes. Current uptake sits at around about 232 tonnes. We've had a catch limit since the start of this year of 20 tonnes per month, and last year we started at 5 tonnes and we increased, I think, right through, so we got to the end of the year and we were at 20 tonnes in the end. We do have regular meetings in place to review both the Western and the North Sea spur dog for the catch limits, the uptake, and how it's looking for vessels, and any feedback and information that the devolved administrations are able to provide, so that we can support going forward what we're doing with the spur dog catch limit. But the ICE's advice for this one is due later this year. So that's everything from me. If there are any stocks that I haven't covered today and you would like some additional information on them, or for myself to or Jacob to prepare some additional slides and add them to this presentation or separately, by all means, please get in touch with us. Our contact details are on this slide. We're more than happy to look at any additional stocks that you want more information on or any more detail. I have had a couple of requests very recently around some of the Sol 7E breakdown of the different gear types that we've done in the past. So we will be looking at a later stage to do a few more slides on some of the gear uptake for Sol 7E, and we will send those round again as a release video most likely, just to give you an uptake on where those stand compared to when you've seen them previously. As I said in the past, not fussy over how you contact us, whether it's an email, a text, a call, a voice note, whatever it is, or WhatsApp. More than happy. Both mine and Jacob's numbers there. We do have a joint mailbox that both of us pick up on, so they've got the Insure Quota Manager email there. I myself work Tuesday to Friday and Jacob works Monday to Friday, so there's generally one of us around. If not, one of the other team will pick it up. Just some useful links there. Highlighted in yellow particularly is the catch limit review page, and that will take you through to the September catch limit review for next month, which will hold things in it like the pollock, the small-eyed ray, and I think there might be a suggested change to things like Brill for 7D&E. Any trouble getting hold of that, it is on the front page of the MMO website, or alternatively you can go on the gov.uk webpage and search there September catch limit review, and you'll generally find the link to that, no problem. Anyway, I hope you found that really useful. If you have got any questions, please do not hesitate to drop us an email or a text message at all. We are due to have an RFG shortly in the next few weeks, and we will, myself and Jacob will be there to hold a Q&A session if you've got any questions around any of these slides or any additional stocks. If you want me to produce anything in the meantime ahead of that, by all means get in touch. But otherwise, thank you very much, and I hope you have a nice afternoon.